Okay, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to talk about utilities. Utilities are all about the satisfaction that a person takes when they partake into a particular course of action, right? If you were to consider two investment choices, let's say X and Y, you want to choose the one that gives you the most satisfaction. And I know it doesn't make sense. How do you measure satisfaction? Well, we use utility function, right? So just in case you are wondering, like, is this like a metric space or what? It is just, again, these values work in comparison, right? So it's a function of wealth, right? And they don't have intrinsic meaning. But when you compare them, let's say that X give you a higher utility than Y, then you would choose Y because X give you a higher satisfaction. It just tells you something in comparison with the other, how satisfied you are or how satisfied you would be, depending on the asset and its risk. That is basically what utility functions are. So before we can go any further, we need to talk about some characteristics of utility. And the first one we are going to talk about is the principle of non-saturation. We say that your function needs to increase as your wealth increases, right? You cannot have investors who feel very anxious when their money is increasing, right? That is irrational. So we say that that is a principle of non-saturation. So that is the first derivative has to be greater than zero. I forgot to add. It has to be greater than zero. So that is zero. Right? So that is what we mean by the principle of non-saturation. So the function has to be increasing. Whether it is increasing exponentially, whether again it uses some kind of logarithm or quadratic, whether it's linear, it just has to be increasing. And then we can look at different investors. Investors who are risk averse are the ones who have a utility function which is like this, right? So the utility function has, again, the second derivative is less than zero, meaning that it is, again, the way that is increasing, the rate of increment is decreasing. It is more like decelerating, right? The more you get wealthier, again, each increment of wealth is less, again, it is less satisfying than the last one, meaning that you would reject a fair gamble because you are a risk-averse investor, right? So another type of investor that we can think about is a risk-seeking investor. So this type of risk investors, you can see the second derivative of their utility is greater than zero, meaning that they are seeking risk. So they would accept a fair gamble, right? Each increment of wealth gives them a higher satisfaction than the previous increment, right? So these investors, we see that they are risk seeking. Then there's another type of investor who are called risk neutral investors. So the second derivative is equal to zero. As you can see, it's just a linear. So these ones are linear functions. Whether this line is like this, whether it's like that, it does not matter. Each increment each increment of wealth gives them the same satisfaction as the last increment of wealth, right? So we are going to talk about some degrees of risk aversion. The first one is the Arrow-Pratt risk aversion or the absolute risk aversion. So the absolute risk aversion, as you can see, it measures how risk averse as you get wealthier. So if your A or your absolute risk aversion is increasing, it means that as your wealth increases, you are becoming more risk averse because it's a measure of risk aversion. As your wealth is increasing, you are becoming more risk averse. And if you are becoming more risk averse, you would put less money, like in terms of value, like you would put less money, like you wouldn't put more money as you did previously in risky asset. It doesn't necessarily mean that you would take out money from your already investment in your risky assets that you already have invested. It just means that when you are going to, again, with your new found wealth, what are you going to do working with that wealth? Are you going to put still more money in risky asset or less? And here it says that you would put less because you are becoming risk averse. But if it's increasing, if your risk aversion is decreasing, it means that you are becoming less risk averse and you would actually be putting more money in risky asset as you are getting wealthier. If your degree of risk aversion is decreasing, right? So we can look at another risk aversion, which is the absolute risk aversion, right? And this is the function that we use for the absolute risk aversion. So this one measures in proportion. As you are getting wealthier, what happened to your proportion of wealth as you get wealthier? And then we say that as you are getting wealthier, again, let's say that your relative risk aversion is increasing, then it means that you are becoming more risk averse when you are getting wealthier. So that means that as you are getting wealthier, you would put less proportions of your wealth in risky asset, right? So, and if your relative risk aversion is decreasing, it means that you would put more, you are becoming less risk averse as you are getting more wealthier, and you would put more proportions of wealth in risky assets, right? So that is the two level of risk aversion, which is the outright risk aversion and the relative risk aversion. Then we need to talk about the concept of certainty equivalence and insurance calculations, right? Again, to say that something has a certainty equivalent, we are trying to find the value C. C, it is that what we call the certainty equivalent. It is that value of C that gives you the same satisfaction as the expectation of the satisfaction, right? Let's say you have two states, A and B. So you have this and this. So let's say these are the two utilities you can get, as we have discussed like previously when we were talking in our class, 0 Rand and 20 Rand, right? You are trying to find out, let's say that the utility will lie somewhere here on this line, on the line that I'm pointing at, right? Again, you are trying to, let's say that it lies somewhere here, right? You are trying to find what is that satisfaction C that lies on the curve of the utility. So it is this value C that gives you the same utility as the expectation of the utility, right? Initially, most of you say that you would take the 10 Rand over gambling. Again, I'm like over tossing a coin and getting 0 Rand or 20 Rand. But there would come a point where I would say, okay, let's say that I decrease that 10 Rand to 5 Rand. Would you still gamble, or would you just take the 5 Rand? Some of you would still take the 5 Rand, and some of you would start to gamble. So we are trying to find out what is that value of C that makes you indifferent between a gamble and which makes you be indifference between a fair gamble. It is that value of C. So for me, maybe I could say, maybe if it's like 4 Rand, if I were to pick between 4 Rand and gambling or tossing a coin, where I would get 0 Rand or 20 Rand, I would, again, I'm like, I would be indifferent. But if it's 5 Rand, I would still take the 5 Rand. If it's more, I would still take it. But if it's less, I might gamble because, I might get the 20 Rand. So that is what the certainty equivalent is all about. And then when we talk about insurance, there are two levels that we can calculate our insurance on. So again, we can calculate insurance on an individual, right? Here is an individual who has a wealth of A, and he's exposed to a loss of X. This loss can be like theft, damages to property, caused by like anything, like acts of gods, again, that is nature, or theft, or again, it can be anything that is a loss, right? Again, let's say you are trying to insure your house or your car, or maybe theft or anything, or strikes. Again, this is what you are going to lose. You are not sure how much you are going to lose, but there is a probability that you might lose, right? If you are driving a car, you might get an accident, or you might get get hijacked or anything, or your car, might be damaged or anything. So again, that is what we consider a loss, and it's random. We're not sure whether it's going to happen today or tomorrow or next year, and we don't know to what degree is it going to happen to. Again, I'm like, whether it's going to be severe or just going to be like something that a petty cash can solve, right? So that is your random loss, right? And then you need to know how much premium should you pay for this random loss. So we say that you are this individual who have a utility function. You are exposed to a loss X. No matter what, you are exposed to a loss X. So you want to find out what is the value, from your wealth, how much are you willing to take out so that you are no longer exposed to the loss X. You are exposed to the loss X, but the insurer again will pay for the losses, right? So you are trying to find out what is this value of P. So again, this is when you are going to use the concept of certainty equivalence to find that value. For an insurer, right? So insurer, again, they have their own wealth, right? This is your loss. Why? And this is your premium. So you are trying to find out how much. Hello? Sorry. So you are trying to find out like, okay, so this is their utility function, right? So this is how much they have. But if they take your premium Q, they will also have to take your loss, your random loss, right? So hence the equation is like this. It is not like the first one where you have the utility of A minus your random loss, because that is your own loss. But here, if they take your premium, they also have to take your loss. Hence, the equation are in the same. Hence, they are on the same side. This is for an insurer, for the insurance company. This is a summary for utilities. Of course, there are other things such as like linear pricing, portfolio choices, but I'm not going to go into details about that. And elementary state pricing and arbitrage, not today. Okay, thank you.